After a family tragedy, 3 generations of the Deetz family return to Winter River. Lydia's life is upended when her teenage daughter, Astrid, accidentally opens a portal to the afterlife, reigniting the chaos of Beetlejuice's haunting presence. The film begins with Lydia Deetz filming an episode of her paranormal talk show, Ghost House, where she interviews people who claim their homes are haunted, allowing Lydia to investigate since she has the ability to see ghosts. While recording an episode, Lydia is startled when she believes she sees Beetlejuice sitting in the audience. After the show, Lydia speaks with her boyfriend and manager, Rory. Feeling unsettled by the encounter, she tries to take some calming pills, but Rory throws them away, except for 2 that he retrieves at her request. Shortly after, Lydia receives a series of frantic calls and texts from her stepmother, Delia, with distressing news. Lydia goes to Delia's art gallery, as Delia has become a renowned artist. There, Delia informs Lydia that her father, Charles, has passed away. He was on a plane that crashed into the ocean. While he initially survived, he was ultimately eaten by a shark, all shown through claymation. The 2 begin making arrangements to return to Winter River for Charles's funeral. In the afterlife, Beetlejuice is working alongside other shrunken-head guys in a department. Meanwhile, a ghost janitor accidentally revives the remains of a woman named Dolores, who reassembles herself and staples her body parts back together. Once whole again, she grabs the janitor and demands to know where Beetlejuice is. When he doesn't provide an answer, she sucks out his soul, leaving him as nothing more than an empty skin bag. Meanwhile, Lydia and her stepmother Delia go to find Lydia's daughter, Astrid. Astrid, who is teased at school for being weird, has a strained relationship with Lydia, believing her mom spends more time with ghosts than with her. At Astrid's school, Delia dramatically announces Charles's death to Astrid, who is left shocked by the news of her grandfather's passing. This leads to a heated argument between Astrid and Lydia, as they have never fully addressed the death of Astrid's father, Richard, who died in a river in South America. Elsewhere, Beetlejuice is summoned by Wolf Jackson, a former actor who is now a ghost detective. Wolf confronts Beetlejuice about the appearance of Dolores, which rattles him. Beetlejuice explains, in a melodramatic Italian novella style, that when he was alive, Dolores was his wife, whom he met while working as a grave robber. After their marriage, Dolores deceived him into drinking poison, as she was the leader of a soul-sucking cult. Before he died, Beetlejuice chopped her into pieces, and now he knows she's back for revenge. Upon learning that Lydia is returning to Winter River, Beetlejuice sees it as his opportunity to escape. The Deetz women arrive in town and stay at Lydia's old home on the hill. After the funeral, Rory seizes the moment to propose to Lydia in front of everyone. Despite her clear reluctance, Astrid, already disapproving of Rory, makes no attempt to hide her disdain. Despite her discomfort, Lydia reluctantly agrees to the proposal. Frustrated, Astrid decides to clear her head and goes for a bike ride around town. During the ride, she crashes into a fence and a tree, where she encounters a boy named Jeremy Fraser in his treehouse. The 2 sit and chat, bonding briefly as Astrid reveals that Lydia is her mom. Later, Astrid ventures into the attic of the house, where she discovers the old town model along with a pamphlet meant to trick her into saying Beetlejuice's name. Before she can say it, Lydia intervenes and stops her. However, when Rory finds the scene, he tries to impose his superficial, New Age methods to help Lydia. Without fully understanding the consequences, he says Beetlejuice's name 3 times, causing both him and Lydia to be transported into the model, where Lydia once again confronts the mischievous demon. Beetlejuice takes the opportunity to scare Rory by transforming into his nightmare face before Lydia manages to send them back home. Meanwhile, Astrid visits Jeremy's house, where she discovers he owns a copy of the handbook for the recently deceased. Jeremy explains that he found it at a yard sale in town. The two then make plans to hang out at his house the following night for Halloween. Hours before the wedding, Astrid has Lydia drive her to Jeremy's house for their planned hangout. Once there, they head upstairs to his room, where Jeremy charms Astrid and the two share a kiss. To their surprise, they begin floating. Jeremy then reveals that he is actually a ghost, having died after falling from the treehouse. He tells Astrid he needs her help to bring him back to life and promises that, in return, she can see her father again. Meanwhile, Lydia meets with a real estate agent who mentions that the house where Jeremy lived has been labeled a murder house and has remained unsold for years. The agent explains that 23 years ago, Jeremy murdered his parents before falling from the treehouse to his death while trying to escape the police. Realizing that Astrid is in danger, Lydia races back to Jeremy's house. At Jeremy's house, he convinces Astrid to read an incantation from the handbook for the recently deceased, which opens a portal to the afterlife. Lydia arrives too late. Astrid has already followed Jeremy through the door. Desperate, Lydia returns home and summons Beetlejuice, who is more than eager to be brought back, referring to Lydia as the love of his afterlife. However, after Lydia explains she needs his help to save Astrid, Beetlejuice agrees, but only on the condition that Lydia marries him so he can escape Dolores. Reluctantly, Lydia agrees. Beetlejuice blasts open a door to the afterlife and has one of the shrunken head guys, Bob, take his place in case anyone comes looking for him. In the backyard, Delia's performing a ritual in honor of Charles, using two asps that she believes have been defanged. Her assumption proves tragically wrong when both snakes bite her in the neck, causing her to collapse and die. Jeremy reveals his true intentions to Astrid, admitting that he tricked her into agreeing to give up her life so he could be brought back to the living. He leaves her at the station to board the Soul Train, while he goes to get his pass stamped for the afterlife. However, before Astrid can board, she is spotted by her father, Richard, who rushes after her. At the same time, Lydia catches up to Astrid and stops her from getting on the train. In their escape, they pass through an emergency exit and find themselves on one of Saturn's moons, the home of the dreaded sandworm. The colossal creature emerges and chases them, but they are saved at the last second by Richard, who pulls them to safety. Meanwhile, Dolores continues her deadly rampage, sucking out the soul of yet another ghost. She arrives at Beetlejuice's department only to find it empty. Elsewhere, Wolf Jackson is interrogating Bob, who is disguised as Beetlejuice. However, when Jackson steps out, Dolores finds Bob and drains his soul as well. Lydia and Astrid reunite with Richard, sharing a brief but heartfelt moment together before setting out to stop Jeremy from having his pass stamped. They arrive at the window only to find Jeremy gloating, thinking he has won. But to his shock, the ghost who stamped the pass is revealed to be none other than Beetlejuice himself. The stamp reads, "Shit out of luck." Beetlejuice then pulls a lever that opens a trapdoor beneath Jeremy, sending him straight down to hell. In the afterlife's waiting room, Delia arrives, still in denial about the fact that she's no longer alive. Desperate to return to the land of the living, she calls upon Beetlejuice for help. Beetlejuice, always eager to cause chaos, is more than happy to assist her. After saying their goodbyes to Richard, Lydia and Astrid return to the living world. Astrid apologizes to Lydia for how she treated her, and the two reconcile. They quickly remember that Lydia's wedding to Rory is happening at that very moment, and Lydia decides to go through with it. When they arrive at the chapel, Beetlejuice crashes the ceremony, bringing Delia along to stop it. He injects Rory with a truth serum, forcing Rory to confess that he never believed in Lydia's paranormal abilities and only intended to marry her for her money. In response, Beetlejuice hands Lydia a glove, which she uses to punch Rory across the room. Beetlejuice then tries to push through with his own wedding to Lydia, trapping the wedding guests inside their phones and distorting their faces. He launches into an extravagant musical number, freezing Jackson and his ghost police force in place. But before the wedding can proceed, Dolores shows up, intending to cause more chaos. In the meantime, Astrid grabs the handbook for the recently deceased and starts searching for a loophole. She also figures out a way to summon help, drawing a door on the floor to Saturn's moon and bringing the sandworm back. Beetlejuice dodges being eaten by the sandworm, instead guiding it toward Rory and Dolores, who are both devoured by the monster. Just before Beetlejuice can finish the wedding, Astrid finds a loophole in the contract. Since Lydia was alive when Beetlejuice brought her into the afterlife, the contract is void. Lydia seizes the moment, says Beetlejuice's name 3 times, and causes him to inflate like a balloon before popping. As Jackson unfreezes, he tells Lydia and Astrid that he must take Delia back to the afterlife. Before departing, Delia says a heartfelt goodbye, promising to haunt Lydia and Astrid until she's ready to cross over. The 3 reaffirm their love for each other. In the afterlife, Delia reunites with Charles, or what remains of him after the shark attack. Later, Lydia films her final episode of Ghost House, announcing her retirement so she can spend more time with Astrid. The 2 then book a flight to Transylvania, where Astrid becomes smitten with a boy dressed as Dracula. The scene cuts to Astrid and the Dracula boy getting married, and later Astrid gives birth, only for the baby to turn out to be a monstrous Beetlejuice, who immediately kills the doctors. Lydia wakes up in horror, realizing it was a nightmare. But just as she calms down, she sees and hears Beetlejuice next to her. She wakes up again, revealing it was a nightmare within a nightmare, implying that Beetlejuice still hasn't fully disappeared from her life. And showing this story ends here. Appreciate a subscribe, and please remember to like. Thanks for watching.